Teresa. Hope you're doing well today. Welcome back to my channel. Well, I'm gonna upload another biscuit recipe. This one is Flaky biscuits, and it's from my favorite Cooked Illustrated book that I've told you guys about. And I will list the recipe underneath in the description box. But this is actually my second try because the first batch I doubled the butter accidentally. They were delicious, but they just weren't as fluffy as we wanted. So we're gonna try again, and this time I'm gonna bring you along. So wish me luck. What I did was preheat my oven to 450, and I'm gonna bake it on the middle rack. And I have all my ingredients set out right here, but this recipe is a little bit different. The method is a little bit different, and the recipe. But I'm gonna go ahead and slice my butter, and they tell you to slice it very, very thin and work it in with your fingers. But I personally do not like to do that, so I'm going to probably use my pastry blender. But I'm still going to cut it really thin, where it's almost kind of like flaky inside the flour. And when I cut this, I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator or the freezer while I measure my dry ingredients, try to separate it. I'm cutting it really uneven, actually, but really thin. If you can see that. I'm not very good at holding up to the camera. What's wrong with me? Anyway, here's how I'm cutting it. And it sticks to the knife, so you gotta be careful. But you're gonna use a whole stick. And we're also gonna use 2 tablespoons of shortening. I have those in the freezer as well. But shortening doesn't really get that hard, actually. And I'm using just plain shortening. If I had butter flavored shortening, I'd probably use that instead. But it does call for just shortening. This book has a lot of recipes and a lot of different kind of methods to try. That's why I like it. And sometimes I don't like it because there's so many steps. But the recipes that I've tried so far have been pretty good. Especially the other biscuit video I did. Those biscuits were so good. That's our favorite biscuit now. And they're a little bit easier because you don't have to roll them out. These are gonna have to roll out and fold. So I'm almost done with the butter. Whoops! I'm just gonna cut it like this, or like this. And anyway, they want you to rub it in with your fingers, each flake, but who has time for that? So I'm going to put this in the refrigerator, then we're going to measure our dry ingredients. Say that I'm using Land O'Lakes salted butter. Sometimes I use the Great Value organic butter, but I like to use salted butter in this recipe. So we're going to measure out 2½ cups of flour. I forgot my half measuring cup. And this is the natural white flour you get from Walmart, non-GMO, but I like Bob's Red Mill the best. So let me measure the flour. You probably don't have to watch me measure all these, but in case you want to follow along the video for the recipe, that's why I'm doing it this way. So that's 2½ cups. And it only calls for 1 tablespoon of sugar, but I like to use 3. And I'm just going to use this kind of sugar today. 1. I like a little bit of sweetness. That's about 2½ actually. And we're going to add 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And then after read the recipe, we're going to add a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. And here's my baking soda. I just keep it in a little container, and I make sure it's fresh. Close these. And then we're gonna add a little salt. It calls for a teaspoon of salt, but since I used salted butter, I'm probably gonna add a heaping ½ teaspoon of salt. Okay. And I'm just gonna mix this around very well. And I'll get the shortening. I'll bring you 2 tablespoons of shortening that I had in the freezer. So I'm just gonna we're gonna work this in first. And I'm gonna use the pastry cutter and just work this in. Yeah, I was surprised this recipe called for shortening and butter. And it tells you why. I just forgot. I've read this recipe so many times and I just cannot remember. Okay, it doesn't take long to work the shortening in. In fact, I can't even feel it. And my flour was kind of fluffed up before. And we're going to be using about another cup of flour once we roll these out. So mix that around. Okay, now we're going to get the butter. I need that butter knife. Okay, we're just going to put the butter in. Kind of break it apart. And my buttermilk's measured and it's in the refrigerator. So, here's my knife. Here's the shortening. So I'm going to show you, this is what the recipe, if you can see this, I'm not doing a very good job. They want you to take the piece of butter and just mash it into the flour like that. I don't really see the difference, so I just use my pastry cutter and it works out fine. But you can do it that way if you prefer. I really like to use the pastry cutter. So I'm going to work this in and then I'll show you what it looks like. You can see it's pretty worked in, and from time to time you'll have to take and clean off your pastry blender or pastry cutter because the butter will get stuck in there. And you want to get that out and make sure it's incorporated into the flour. But it looks like it's pretty good. And it's a little bit different than what they say, but that's good. Okay, let me clean this up and then I'll get the butter. Before you put it in, before you put the buttermilk in, you're going to take this and we're going to put it in the freezer for 10 minutes. I put my mat down, and for those of you that know my videos, I always have trouble with my mat slipping. Well, my husband told me just tape it, so maybe I won't slide all over this time. This is an unusual step, but you're going to spray a little bit of spray, whatever kind of spray you have. You're just going to spray a little bit because we don't want to incorporate too much flour in the dough. So I'm going to get a paper towel and just kind of spread it out evenly. And then we're going to take about 1/3 cup of flour, and I'm going to go ahead and put the bowl on top of here and just kind of spread it out evenly because we're going to be rolling it. And this way the flour sticks to the spray and you don't have any heavy pockets to stick to your dough and make a dry biscuit. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that step. And it's almost time to take the dough out of the freezer. Here's my flour and butter and shortening, and here's my buttermilk. It's 1 1/4 cups. I'm not going to add all of it at once. I'm going to save about 2 tablespoons. And if I need more, then I'll add the rest. But we're going to mix this up first. And it's going to be a pretty sticky, shaggy dough. And last time I made it, I needed all the buttermilk. Actually, I needed a little extra. And you can start with a fork or... Yeah, I can already tell that I'm going to need the rest of this. I love to use buttermilk. And this happens to be low-fat buttermilk, but you can use any... I like full-fat too, but I just got that one this time. See, I think it's a little dry, but I'm gonna let me clean this off and then stir again. You want it to clean the sides of the bowl. And mine's not. So I'm going to get a little bit more buttermilk. It could be just the flour that I'm using. I'm going to put about 2 more tablespoons in my cup. And just pour some of this. Because you want it to be a little wet. And not too wet. But see, it's cleaning the sides of the bowl. And you want it, it's going to be sticky. I'm going to clean my sides of the bowl really well. That's why I didn't use a fork like the book said, because how can you clean the sides of the bowl very well with the fork? Okay, that looks good. It's pretty wet. I might add a little bit too much, but I can fix it. So I'm just going to dump it out onto this, and I'm going to put more flour on top. You get all the dough out. And they tell you to roll it in certain measurements, and I might not be exact, but that's okay. It's still going to come out in the end. So we need a little bit more flour. Let me open my flour. You get a little bit more out, and then you want to flour your hands. You just kind of want to roll it into a ball. Yeah, mine's pretty wet. You don't want to add too much, just a little bit at a time. Let's turn it upside down. I forgot to flour my hands. A little bit more. A little bit more on top. Clean off my hands. Okay, it's still pretty wet, but that's good because we want a moist biscuit. And they always say to pat it out into a square, and I always have trouble getting the right shape. Just sprinkle a little bit more on my board. This is a messy job too. I hope you can see this. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with about a 10-inch square, and you're going to want your bench scraper to help you fold it, because it might stick. And you want to flour your rolling pin. So I'm just going to just roll it out a little bit. Not a very good square. And if you have too much flour, you just take your brush and just brush it off. Like that. So now, let me see my book again. I'm going to get flour in my hair because I have to put my glasses on. Then I'm going to roll it into an 18 by 14-inch rectangle, which I never get it exact, but that's okay. As long as you get it, you can fold it. This dough looks great, though. It's going to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. That looks pretty close. You can measure it if you want to. It's a little bit short. I gotta roll a little bit more because it's a little uneven, like so. And you want to straighten it up along the edges. Now we're gonna just take it around and see if it's stuck anywhere, and loosen it. And we're gonna fold it, or try to fold it. It's pretty wet, so I'm gonna brush this off because it's a lot of flour. I'm gonna take this piece, a little bit stuck, but that's okay. Just put a little flour on there. You might need to add a little flour, and you can brush the excess off. I'll just add a little bit at a time, and we're gonna take it and we're gonna rotate it. And we're gonna roll it out again to about the same size. So we want flaky layers. Let's see, I'll measure this one. That's 17. That's close enough. Roll it out just a little bit more this way. I'm going to fold it again. Brush off my excess flour. Got a lot right here. Take this side. I'm going to do this one more time. So I showed you how to fold it, so I'm going to do this one more time, and then I'll bring you back. I folded it my last time, and also I have about 4 tablespoons of butter that I melted because I like to brush the biscuits with butter at the beginning, before I bake them and after I bake them. So it says to roll them in about a 10-inch square, but what I'm looking for is about a 1/2 inch thick. It doesn't have to be a perfect 10-inch square, and I'm trying to make it even. It says it'll make about 9 biscuits. I cannot roll a square. I can roll a rectangle. It looks uneven. I guess you have to be patient. It looks about a 1/2 inch thick. So I have my biscuit cutter. Let me move the rolling pin. And I have my pan lined with parchment paper. I love to use parchment paper. It makes cleaning up so much easier. Put this here. I need a bigger kitchen, I think. So I'm going to dust my cutter. And I'm going to have trouble getting an even amount the way I rolled it. But that's okay. And they say not to twist it, but that's about a 1/2 inch thick. And you can kind of see the layers. And you can dust off the extra flour also. I tried to do that as I went. The book says place them an inch apart, but I like to place them close together. Not touching, but almost touching. I'm trying to get them. See, I'm just going to dust off the little extra flour right there. I'm going to have to re-roll it. Biscuits are the best. Homemade biscuits are the best. And I have homemade strawberry jam. It's my favorite. So that is, let's see, that's 8 right there. So let's roll this a little bit or push it together. And it's still really moist, so I think it's going to be great. And you know, the roll ones, I need my rolling pin again. The re-roll ones, they say don't come out as well as the first ones, but they're okay. We eat them. And there I go again, making a rectangle. As long as it's the right thickness. Let's see if I can. I think I'm going to get a couple more than 9. Let's see, one more. And I don't know how I end up with more, but I ended up with more last time. And I'm going to re-roll the rest too. I'm going to make a couple more because it's fine. Just roll this out just a little bit. Probably this one might be a little tough because I re-rolled it a few times. And you could freeze these biscuits once they're made and just reheat them in the oven, and they're delicious. So you can make them in advance. I think that's about it. Oh, this one's going to be uneven. Oh well. I'm running out of room on my pan anyway. So I'm going to put them. I have made a complete mess. We put this up. So now we're going to, this is how I'm going to place them, like this on the pan. See, they're not touching, but they're almost touching. And they're all pretty much all the same thickness. This one's a little bit thinner in this one, but that's okay. So we're going to take the, well, I don't want to put my pan on this thing, but I want you to be able to see. So I'm going to move the camera over and get a little flour on the tripod. And we're going to brush these with butter. And this is salted butter as well that I heated in the microwave. I'm going to give them a good brush. The butter is good for flavor, and it also helps color them, and it also helps make them have a little crisp top. My other biscuit recipe, you start, son of a gun, something just flew into my biscuit. Dang it. Sorry. I don't know what that was, but I'm gonna kill it in the oven. I got it out. That wasn't supposed to happen in this video. I guess you probably already know how to brush biscuits with butter, but I just wanted to show you, like, I like to brush them really, really well. So I'm gonna pop these in the oven for about 17 minutes, and then we'll see. I just took the biscuits out of the oven. They took about 18 minutes, and they're nice and fluffy. They're hot. I like to brush them with butter once they come out. And I just threw the rest of the dough in there for this one and this one. They smell really nice. But I'm going to brush these with butter and let them cool for just a second, and then we'll do a taste test. And they're pretty flaky and they're very moist. Let's cut one open. You can fold them more times if you want. But look how tender and moist those are. So I'm just going to dot it with a little bit of my butter that I have left over. Like this. Usually I just put a pat of butter, but we let them cool just for a second. And I'm going to eat my homemade strawberry jam. It's my favorite. My very favorite. I also have a peach one that I like too, but I use strawberry most of the time. So the real test is the flavor and the texture. Let me cut this. Oh. And I like the top and the bottom are crispy, but the inside is very moist and tender. So I was worried that I added too much flour when I was rolling it, but I tried to brush it off so they wouldn't be dry. Mmm. Sorry, that book has some really good recipes. There's another biscuit recipe I want to try also. It uses heavy cream. If you ask me which one's my favorite, I can't choose because I love the other ones a lot too that's on my channel. But these are really just as good. And if you like flaky biscuits, then this is the recipe for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you try this recipe. It's really, really good. And I really like the salted butter. And please subscribe if you like these kind of videos. And you have a great day. Bye.